Hi there, welcome to English with Teacher Dixon. I want to talk about the difference between main clause and subordinate clause. First, let me remind you of what I said about clauses previously. A clause is a group of words that is made up of the subject and the predicate. The predicate may be a verb or a verb and other words. So in a clause, we must have the subject, that's the doer of the action or the one the whole statement is about, and then the predicate, which is the verb and all the other part of the statement of the clause apart from the subject. All right, then why do we call one type of clause dependent and the other one independent? The main clause is described as independent clause because it can stand on its own and make complete sense. Then the subordinate clause is described as dependent clause because it cannot stand on its own and make complete sense. For example, if you say the baby cries, that is a main clause because first it has the subject, which is the baby, and then the verb or the predicate, which is cries. The baby cries. So it makes complete sense on its own because we understand that it is the habit of the baby to cry when you say the baby cries. But if you say, if you don't come to my house, if you don't come to my house, that is a typical example of subordinate clause or dependent clause. It is dependent in the sense that it will warrant a question. Your listener will be eager to know what will happen if he or she doesn't come to your house, meaning that that statement is incomplete. It does not make complete sense. But if you say, if you don't come to my house, I will not give you the money, that makes complete sense. And it makes complete sense after adding the main clause, I will not give you the money. So a subordinate clause relies on the main clause to make complete sense. If you don't come to my house on its own, does not make complete sense. But it is a clause because it has the subject, you, and the predicate, don't come to my house. But when you add, I will not give you the money, it makes complete sense. So I will not give you the money is the main clause. Why if you don't come to my house is the subordinate clause. Now let's look into the constituents of the subordinate clause as different from what we have in the main clause. In the main clause we have just the subject and the predicate, but in a subordinate clause we have a subordinating conjunction introducing the clause. For instance, if, the word if is a subordinating conjunction. We have other subordinating conjunctions like because, unless, after, and many more. So unless you come to my house, I will not give you the money. Unless you come to my house is a subordinate clause, is a dependent clause because it cannot stand on its own and make complete sense. It depends on I will not give you the money to make complete sense. So the constituents of a subordinate clause are the subordinating conjunction, the subject, and then the predicates. Whereas the constituent of the main clause, the subject and their predicate. So the only thing that is making The first clause, dependent, that's the subordinate clause, dependent, is the availability of the subordinating conjunction at the beginning of that clause. So that is what makes it dependent. So note the difference between a dependent clause and independent clause. And again, note that it is not all about the number of words we have in those expressions that make them clauses. A clause is determined by the availability of the subject and the predicate. That's to say, two word classes must be involved. That's the noun or the noun phrase or a pronoun must function as the subject, and then you have the verb. Jesus wept, as I used previously. The baby cries, he laments. Those are typical examples of main clauses, or you can call them independent clauses. Thank you for watching this video. I want to believe you know the difference between subordinate clause and main clause. I remain your favorite English teacher, Dixon.